toxic masculinity.
Unsealed Soviet archives reveal cover-ups at Chernobyl before the disaster. Before the disaster. That's the important thing here. Let's go ahead and switch. Oops. Let's go. All right. So this is the story from the Epoch Times. Unsealed Soviet archives reveal cover-ups at Chernobyl plant before disaster. Kiev, the Soviet... So now, one of the points that Ashley wanted me to make when she recommended this story... Ashley is the person that compiles my stories, and I pick from like 10 every day to do the news. But her point was that, they don't like nuclear power on the left, right? A lot of people are scared of nuclear power. And a lot, like the major disaster they always point to is Chernobyl. Look, Chernobyl could happen again. But what it looks like is that the USSR knew there were problems with Chernobyl, and they covered it up. It would be very difficult to repeat such a disaster today, because I just don't think anybody would cover up something this serious. You'd have a lot of checks and balances in place here. It looks like We Are Concerned over here in the comment section has already initiated or already gone in the direction I wanted to go. Just like Biden cover-up, corrupt. Exactly. That's the parallel I was going to draw. So there's a little bit of a hint for you as to where I'm going with this. All right, so let's see here. Kiev, the Soviet Union knew that the Chernobyl nuclear plant was dangerous and covered up emergencies there before the 1986 disaster, the Ukraine authorities said as they released documents to mark the 35th anniversary of the accident on Monday. After a botched safety test, in the fourth reactor of the plant, located in what was the Soviet Union, clouds of radioactive material from Chernobyl spread across Europe, blah, 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 blah. We all know that. Okay. But the archives show that there was a radiation released at the plant in 1982 that was covered up using what was a KGB report at the time called Measures to Prevent Panic and Provocate Rumors. The Ukraine Security Service said in a statement on Monday. So this is the part I want to really talk about. So prevent panic and prevent provocative rumors, right? Prevent panic. Okay, so this is a lot of times what we hear as an excuse from the left, right? Consider what Fauci said, right? Fauci said, that this is actually what Trump did. This is kind of what Trump did. And I don't think that Trump did this on purpose. I think that this was something that was presented to Donald Trump by his advisors. This is something that the government tends to want to do to prevent panic, and so they use this as an excuse to lie to Americans. And this is a fair criticism of Trump, that he wasn't as serious. He didn't seem to be as serious about the COVID problem at the beginning of the pandemic as he did. Now, that's not to say he didn't do anything behind the scenes, right? Chernobyl's a completely different story, because in Chernobyl, behind the scenes, they were also covering things up, right? They weren't fixing anything. They weren't doing anything to mitigate the problem. Whereas Trump was scrambling behind the scenes to try to stop the virus from coming to the United States. While his rhetoric to the public was, this may not be as bad as we think it will. It could dissipate in the summer. But the problem with that is that we tend to blame Trump for those expressions of positivity and keeping people's spirits up, when in reality, I think that was what the medical advisors were telling him, right? So it wasn't really Trump wasn't intentionally lying to the American people. Trump was not ignoring his duties there. I think he was doing the right thing. He was doing everything right as far as I'm concerned. But there is this tendency to undercut the severity of any kind of a problem. And certainly, and I'm actually fine with criticism of Trump doing that. If people think that Trump should have been more serious about the COVID pandemic, okay, that's fine. I think that's a fair criticism. I don't agree with people. I think he was fairly honest with the American people. You can always spin things different ways, and, I don't know exactly what was in Trump's mind at the time. The Republicans, I think, will always think the best, and the Democrats will always think the worst. But if you move over to the Democrats, it's basically like this Chernobyl cover-up with every single story, right? Every single story is a Chernobyl cover-up. So if you look at what happened specifically with Hunter Biden's laptop, they immediately said, "Oh, no. That's fake news. That's not real. That's a Russian propaganda." It wasn't Russian propaganda. That's a lie. When it comes to Biden telling the Ukraine government, you have to fire the the state prosecutor, Victor Shokin. You have to fire this guy, and if you don't fire him, I'm not going to allow any aid money to go into Ukraine. Right? This was extortion. Right? He was blackmailing them, and he was using aid money to blackmail them. Right? And that story was totally covered up by the left. Oh, there's nothing here. There's nothing. Nothing bad happened. Right? All of the money that was given to Hunter Biden through China, that was all covered up by the press. Oh, nothing to see here. The left does this with every single story. And I feel like this is a common tactic on the left. And if you think about what was the Soviet Union, they were the sort of ultimate dream of leftists today, right? Leftists today dream for a socialist state. That's what the USSR was. This is their modus operandi. If there's something ugly about their party or about their government or about what they've done, they just cover it up. They just paint over it. No, nothing to see here. This is not real. It's called gaslighting, right? You see something obviously true, and then the left-wing media says, no, there's nothing. What you're seeing is a lie. Your eyes are lying to you. That's not true. This is true. And then they pump something else at you, right? Yeah, anyway. So I just thought it was an interesting parallel that we find with politics today. There is a natural tendency, I think, for politicians to take any kind of disaster, any kind of negative thing that's occurring during their tenure in power, and to minimize it. But with the Democrats and with the Soviet Union, it goes way beyond that, right? They're not just minimizing a problem that may make them look bad. They're trying to erase it, right? They're trying to completely cover it up, completely pretend that it doesn't exist at all. And just blatantly lying to the American people, blatantly lying to the Russian people, or in this case to the Ukrainian people. To me, this is the worst kind of country to live in, where your government just blatantly lies to you constantly about the most dangerous things. There were separate emergencies at the plant in 1984. It added in 1983, the Moscow leadership revived information that the Chernobyl nuclear plant was one of the most dangerous nuclear plants in the USSR due to lack of safety equipment. So essentially, it probably should have been shut down, or they should have completely renovated it before the disaster. Essentially, there were signs that some kind of disaster could happen. When a French journalist collected water and soil samples from the Chernobyl area after the accident in 1987, the KGB swapped the samples for fake ones in a special operation. Holy crap. That really is a cover-up. Another thing that they like to cover up in the Democrat Party is they tend to cover up the real causes of crime and the real causes of problems that we have in our society, right? So Black Lives Matter is constantly marching against cops because they're saying cops are racist. Okay, obviously that's not true. What is the truth? Why is it that so many black kids are getting shot in America? Well, it's because of other black kids, right? There's a ton of black crime in America. But, and I talked about this recently, anytime there is black crime in America, it goes unreported by the leftist news media. Why is it going unreported? Because there is this insane idea on the left. Hey, buddy, you want up? There's this insane idea on the left that if white people hear about the crimes of black people, we'll all become a bunch of racists and start lynching people in the streets. This is, of course, ridiculous. But some leftists really do think that. Hey. There is this weird fear. No, don't go in front of the camera. Do not go in front of the camera. Aston, you want to play with this lid of this bottle? Check it out. Look. Yep, there you go. Yep. um, yeah, and they're constantly trying to say, okay, we got to get rid of your, assault rifles, right? Your AR-15s. We got to get rid of them because they're causing all these deaths in America. Everybody's shooting everybody with these AR-15s. Of course, that's not true. It's handguns. Handguns are the bigger problem. But the even bigger problem with that is that handguns in the hands of criminals is the bigger problem. They want to let all the criminals out of the prisons, but they ignore the fact that these people end up committing more crime after they are released. And so they like to cover up the reality. They like to cover up reality because they don't want the public to know what's really going on. They don't trust the public to react in the way they want them to, or in a way that they feel is correct or appropriate. And so they just lie. They just lie constantly. I think that with Republicans, our politicians to some degree trust us a little bit more, right? There is a kind of belief that we can handle the truth. We can handle the realities of the world, and we're not going to lose our minds. But Democrats think that the public has to be managed. And I think that is one major reason why we need to get rid of the Democrats from political office. They just, this is a country that's supposed to be run by the people. Democrats don't think it should be. The Soviets did not have a country that was run by the people, even though it was socialist, right? They had a country that was run by the oligarchs, these people at the very top that would just control literally everything. And that's what the Democrats want for our country. But then when you lie to people enough about a dangerous situation, right? I constantly warn people on this channel about the problems of encouraging black people in America to be racist against white people. And they do that all the time. They're constantly encouraging black people to be racist against white people, and they cover up any kind of crime that occurs from black America against white America. And what ends up happening with that, you remember, you saw during the riots, there was just these are peaceful protests. Meanwhile, there's buildings burning behind them. What ends up happening is a Chernobyl disaster, right? You don't see the warning signs of a great disaster if the people who are aware of those warning signs are covering them up from you, right? That you don't ever see them. You're not aware of them. Of course, people in America aren't aware of a potential explosion, a potential Chernobyl on a societal level if the U.S. government keeps hiding things, if the media keeps hiding things. Fortunately, we have certain kinds of journalists. We have certain kinds of media outlets, like my own show. I think people like Tucker Carlson help out to some degree. Places like Sky News in Australia, that's a good source, Newsmax, OAN, places like this. There are certain outlets where you can get the truth about these things. Breitbart, I think the New York Post is doing a great job recently. My friend Sebastian Gorka reports the truth. So, it is out there. People do know. It's a little bit better known than, say, a Chernobyl disaster. But still, America is a powder keg, right? We do have a lot of problems right now that are being... America is being blinded to, most of America, right? People who watch CNN. And then something like this happens. Thousands more later succumb to radiation-related illnesses such as cancer, although the total death toll and long-term health effects remain a subject of intense debate. The present-day government in Kiev has highlighted the Soviet authorities' bungled handling of the accident in attempts to cover up the disaster and the aftermath. Okay, well, we know what happened with Chernobyl, so I'm not going to continue reading the rest of the story. But anyway, if you'd like to read the story, this is the Epoch Times. And let's move on to the next story. What have we got, Chris? Well, hold on a second. Let me get to it. All right, I got the document open. It says, Uncle Tim. Did you guys hear about this? Uncle Tim trends on Twitter following Republican Tim Scott's speech. So this was the Republican reaction to Joe Biden's speech. And these Democrats, they didn't like that Tim Scott was saying there was no racism in America, or America wasn't a racist country. And so they all lost their minds and started calling him Uncle Tim, which is, of course, a reference to the concept of the Uncle Tom in the minds of essentially racist people who don't like black people they don't agree with.
Toxic Masculinity. Weekdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.